Pastor Vince with Clergy in Support of the Second Amendment again. In this video, I want to go through the Senate framework and talk about how concerned we should be about each section of it, each proposal, and how I think we should react to each one. Of course, we don't have a bill at this point, and the good news is we can still influence it because we don't have a bill. But agree or disagree with me, contact your lawmakers. I'm going to put a link in the description where you can easily find how to email them. It's not even going to take you 5 minutes. Contact your lawmakers. I'm going to provide a suggested copy and paste note to them. So I can make it as easy as I can, but contact your lawmakers. Our rights are at stake. Now let me say up front that I think most of these proposals would be found to be constitutional by our current Supreme Court. In fact, I think many of the things they left out or got pushed out, the way that that our side got them pushed out was simply to point out these are probably not going to pass constitutional muster. Now, that doesn't mean they are constitutional. It doesn't mean I think they're constitutional, or that we shouldn't challenge them in court. We should. It simply means that I believe, based on just paying attention, that our current Supreme Court likely would find all of these measures constitutional. So let's take a look at them, one at a time here. The first one, support for state crisis intervention orders, other words, red flag laws. Now, this will not be popular with my fellow Second Amendment advocates, but I have to tell you the truth about the facts we're up against. First of all, ex parte hearings where the person is not present, such as are used in red flag laws and, for that matter, restraining orders, have consistently been found to be constitutional. Do I think this is wrong? Absolutely. Does that change reality? Not one bit. We are not going to stop these laws by jumping up and down and saying they violate due process. We should challenge them in court, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere with it. If you're interested in the controlling Supreme Court precedent upholding these rulings, these hearings, that ruling is Matthews v. Eldridge, 1976, and you can look that up on the Supreme Court website, I believe. I think they go back that far. I will put a link to that entire ruling in the description. Now, even though I think red flag laws are basically useless and dumb, and I base that on a decade of experience in EMS where I dealt with people mentally ill all the time, polling shows that support for red flag laws is at 86%. Now, I think that polling's probably accurate. I think a great deal of the public, given the dropping support for assault weapons bans, is seeing red flag laws as a better solution than gun bans. And I guess that's a good thing. But the problem is, with 86% support, we are not going to get the entire red flag provision removed by jumping up and down and saying no, 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 no. We will be ignored if we do that. Absolutely ignored. So what can we do? Well, we can demand provisions in the red flag section that the other side doesn't want and that most people, other than anti-gun activists, will find quite reasonable. I would say that we should insist that any red flag law receiving federal funding must have the following provisions. It must strictly limit who can request an order. No calling them in from out of state. No, your next door neighbor thinks you're a threat. It should be law enforcement and immediate family only. And if somebody else thinks you need a red flag order, they should call the cops and convince them. And they will be much harder to convince than a court, in my opinion. And I base that again on 10 years in EMS and watching how they handle mental health commitments. Much of the public, rightly or wrongly, is supportive. But we can limit the damage. We should require a second hearing within 1 week, no more, of that order being issued. We should provide, the law should demand that the accused be provided with free legal counsel in their defense. And it should provide for strict and severe penalties for abuse, which is all too common in the 19 states that have these laws. And this is very important because this is what the Republicans are arguing for now, states that want to use these funds for something other than red flag laws that is related to gun violence should be able to do so. The anti-gun folks don't want that. They want red flag laws only. So let's argue that, yeah, provide the funding, but it could be used for something else. Now, if we are lucky, the other side will eventually kill the bill over this. But if we're not lucky, we will have greatly limited the damage and potentially even rolled back some of the red flag provisions in states like California, where virtually anybody can apply for an order and where the system is constantly abused. Now, let's move on to the next one, which is a little bit better. Investment in children and family mental health services. This is something we've been asking for years. So yes, we need to look at what the exact wording is when the bill comes out, but we certainly should support it. Protection for victims of domestic violence. And I want to go ahead and read what the senator wrote here. He says, convicted domestic violent abusers and individuals subject to domestic violence restraining orders are included in NICS, including those who have or have had a continuing relationship of a romantic or intimate nature. The senator makes a very good point here. Under current law, anyone who's subject to a restraining order is a prohibited person. That's already the law. So it's unclear exactly what's being talked about here, and that should concern us. It could be, and let's hope, that our opponents are just thinking that their supporters are ignorant, and they are, and think that this is currently allowed, so if they put this in the bill and duplicate a provision, they'll get credit for doing something. But they could be trying to sneak something in, and we need to be very alert to that when the bill is actually published. Next is funding for school-based mental health and supportive services. Again, something we've been asking for, something we probably should support, and always watch the text of the bill to make sure nothing's been snuck in. Funding for school safety resources. Again, something we've asked for. Now, in addition to the funding for door locks and fencing and physical security barriers and general training for school staff, all of which is important, we should insist that this funding be allowed to be used for armed security at schools, including the training of school staff and teachers to carry firearms. We should insist that that provision be in there. The other side won't like that, but we should insist on it. Next, clarification of federally licensed firearms dealer. It says, cracks down on criminals who illegally evade licensing requirements. Now, again, some of my fellow 2A advocates may be upset with me at this point, but I'm going to say this could be a good thing or a bad thing, all depending on how the bill is written. Right now, there is no bright line that defines when you need an FFL and when you don't. That is dangerous. And I guarantee you that there are people who are just selling firearms from their private collection who ended up being prosecuted. I don't know if they've been convicted, but I guarantee you somebody's been prosecuted for it, when all they were doing was selling a firearm that they bought with no intention of reselling, but they didn't like it, or, they inherited it, whatever. They just decided to sell this firearm legally in their state. We need a bright line definition of when an FFL is required, because that's going to prevent abuse by the ATF. So, cautiously, I'm supportive of this, depending on how they write the definition. Of course, the other side wants every gun sale to require an FFL, so I'm looking for them, when they write the bill, to try and make it almost impossible for you to legally sell a gun without an FFL. So, we need to argue strongly that the current law that allows the states to regulate this, not the federal government, should remain in place. We need to watch the wording very, very carefully. The next one is telehealth investments. Invests in programs that increase access to mental and behavioral health services for youth and families via telehealth. That'll probably help in rural areas. Again, on the surface, something we probably should support. Now we come to the last really controversial provision, and that is the under 21 enhanced review process. Here's another one that I'm going to believe if we simply say no way, we're going to lose big time. We don't want to stand in front of this and yell no, no, no. What we want to do is craft it to minimize the impact. Why do I say that? Nearly 3 out of 4 Americans already want to ban gun sales to people under 21 years of age. Let that one sink in. That makes it a losing issue for us. And the way we get around that, thankfully, is in the courts, which have already ruled that that's going too far in a couple of cases, and probably will rule even more so after the next Supreme Court ruling. However, including background checks for juveniles up to the age of 21, including those juvenile background checks, is probably going to be constitutional. I just think it's a losing issue for us to say to the public, okay, somebody committed a felony at 17. They got prosecuted as a juvenile, so they're not convicted of a crime. So the moment they turn 18, they can go out and buy a firearm. That ain't going to fly. Most people are going to say that's ridiculous. And to a certain degree, especially for violent felonies as juveniles, I agree. So here's what I think we should do. We need to provide these at a brief period of time where they can have these delays. No more than 2 years. Within that time, they need to get their act together and get these records into NICS and have a system set up so they're automatically deleted when the subject turns 21. At that point, the law should provide for nothing different than anybody else buying a firearm. Simple NICS check. Additionally, and this is really important, really, really important, we should get something for this, and the something we should get is the complete deletion of all the records that ATF illegally digitized, and a clear ban with criminal penalties for any further digitization of those records. Last is another one that's kind of weird. It says penalties for straw purchasing, cracks down on criminals who illegally straw purchase and traffic guns. It's already illegal. Exactly what are they going to include in the bill? Increased penalties? I don't know. I don't know. Are they trying to sneak something else in? Again, I don't know. We need to watch the bill. Now there's one last huge question that looms over all of this. How will the coming Supreme Court ruling affect these measures, if it affects them at all? And the problem here is we don't have the bill, and we also don't have the ruling. And until we have both of them, we can't put them together and see what our chances are of striking down some of the more offensive provisions. So that's where I'm at. Wherever you're at, contact your lawmakers. If you disagree with me on everything, contact your lawmakers. Let them know what you think. Do it now. because they're drafting the bill right now as I record this. Do not put it off, please. If you've ever done it, do it now. So, thanks for your time. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help. But even more important, like I said, contact those lawmakers.